There's been lots of debate about Israel's war in Gaza, Yemen's actions in the Red Sea, and what this all means for global logistics. Could it mean massive disruptions to trade flows and higher inflation, with the actions of the Houthis in particular a challenge to economic globalization? And that's the argument made by the US and UK, who've launched multiple airstrikes on Yemen for precisely that reason. But responding to the implications of the Houthi attacks on Israeli ships in the Red Sea, academic and journalist Myriam Francois had this to say.
There are many who are saying that, frankly, the Biden administration should have acted sooner and faster, that hundreds of billions of dollars has been put at risk because the Houthis have held this area in the Red Sea at ransom.
Sorry, so just let me get this straight, Yalda. So we are bombing one of the poorest countries in the world that has been under a humanitarian blockade. There has been famine. These people have been decimated. And we are bombing them because a couple of guys in dinghies in support for the Palestinians who are having a genocide committed against them. They're objecting to that and we're bombing them. Come on now. I mean, this is just an insane world for us to even think. I'm so sorry your Amazon packages are delayed. I really am. Like, I wish mine came on time. But, you know, genocide, guys, genocide. There are 2 mothers a day dying in Gaza right now. It's 109 days into a conflict in which a humanitarian crisis has been declared to the world day out.
By the way,
I'm sorry your Amazon packages have been delayed. Memorable line, though the implications of shipping lanes in West Asia being closed are a little bit bigger than that. Ash, are Britain and the US bombing a country so our prime deliveries arrive on time?
I think that was very pithily put by Myriam Francois. And the element of truth in what she's saying is that when you compare what the Houthis are doing to what Israel is doing to the people of Gaza, there is absolutely no sense of moral equivalence between these things, let alone a sense that, you know, what the Houthis are doing is so bad and so awful that requires our direct military intervention when our state can't even bring itself to back calls for a permanent ceasefire in Israel and Gaza. So that's where I think she's right. Where I think she's wrong is to reduce it simply to the matter of just-in-time deliveries. One, just-in-time deliveries are the basis of our retail economy. So it's not just about convenience, it's also about prices in the shops. That's something which really does matter to people. And the second thing, of course, is energy, right? Thinking about transporting, you know, natural gas, thinking about transporting oil. We've been witnesses to what happens when you have an energy-related inflationary shock here in Europe. And if you have disruption to Red Sea shipping, that's very much something that can happen again. Now, that's not to say that what this automatically adds up to is a moral case for bombing Yemen. I think what this adds up to is a moral, a geoeconomic, and a domestic political case for pressuring Israel, using military aid to do it, by putting that on the table and saying you're not going to get any more, to negotiate a permanent ceasefire in Israel and permanent ceasefire in Gaza. The reason why I put it like that is that Israel don't give a shit if they destabilize the Middle East. That's actually very good for them, right? Because it keeps America, and to a lesser extent Britain, embroiled in supporting the Israeli government and the Israeli army, right? So that's actually quite good for them. And that kind of regional instability is really bad for everyone else. It's bad for us, the British people, puts us at greater risk of terrorism, inflationary price rises. It's only really good for our military industrial complex because they get to sell more weapons, right? That's kind of it. So I don't think that you need to minimize the impact of Houthi disruption to Red Sea shipping to say that morally it's not an equivalent to what Israel is doing to Gaza, or even you don't need to minimize it to say you think that it's justified, right? I think that's a perfectly legitimate argument to make.
Yeah, the who benefits question is so intriguing. I saw somebody on Twitter the other day, an American, say it's time to take back the Hagia Sophia and make it into a cathedral. It's obviously presently a mosque. There are some right-wing Americans who are just addicted to creating failed states and sending millions of refugees to Europe. And I cannot quite understand why even European conservatives want to be a part of that. I can't get my head around it. Maybe they're really smart and they know something I don't. Anyway, back to Myriam Francois. She went on to say this.
There are many who are Yemen watchers who monitor and follow the Houthis who say this is doing wonders for their branding, actually, that it isn't just the Palestinian cause that they're focused on.
So call a ceasefire now and end the positive branding. If you want to stop the Houthis doing what they're doing, then call a ceasefire
Do you genuinely believe that
now.
the Houthis would stop doing what they're doing?
They have literally said that that's why they're doing what they're doing. They have not previously blocked those routes for any other reason except this one. So yes, I do. And I also think the West needs to start to understand that you cannot just go around playing cowboys in the world. There are consequences to your actions. You cannot just go around bombing people's countries, ignoring international law and expect no repercussions. For every cause, there is a consequence. And just because you don't like a couple of guys trying to resist,
I mean, these are now prescribed terrorists.
Sure, according to Western governments, they are
also
terrorist
according to the Yemeni people, because they've
which is a Saudi-backed government, which is essentially our.
But the Yemenis who live, under Houthi rule, talk about the fact that this group continues to terrorize them as well.
Yeah, I'm no fan of the Houthis, apart from when they're blockading in favor of a ceasefire, which should have been called a long time ago.
This is crazy journalism for me, from Yalda Hakim. She's saying the Houthis are a prescribed organization, including by the Yemeni people. They're not prescribed by the Yemeni people. What are you talking about? They're prescribed by the British government in this country. They're not prescribed, but how can the Yemeni people prescribe them? The Houthis control land, which includes about 70% of Yemen. They've just been in a war where around 300,000 people have died, yet they've still maintained political control. So they're probably very robust as an organization, that you have to have some political consent to be able to do that. You have to. Sorry, I know it's not popular to say this. We have to choose a different bad guy every day of the week. I get it. That's how the West operates. But we at Novara Media are also here to be objective and try and relay facts. You cannot control millions of people in a country with a median age of 18, 19 without some consent, right? Which is, Yalda Hakim doesn't appear to think that. And on the point of they're prescribed, therefore you can't have an opinion on something. This is what really worries me. There's a distinction between actively supporting a terrorist organization, although I think at this point the Houthis it's the Yemeni state. I think it's cope to say otherwise. There's a difference between saying that and trying to explain why a certain group of people have done something. That basically the inference there is, the implication rather, it's a prescribed organization. You can't have these opinions. I thought this was a free country with freedom of the press, freedom of speech. You're not inciting anything. Worrying, really worrying. I think we're going there, by the way. I think even trying to explain the actions of organizations which are prescribed, which, by the way, includes the YPG. I think the YPG did a great job fighting ISIS in Syria. Sue me. I think we're going in that direction where even if you try and explain these things, you're going to get in trouble. Ash, on this point with regards to the Houthis, very quickly, where do you stand on this? Because it's a fine line we all have to judge as journalists in this game of an organization's been prescribed. I certainly don't support the Houthis. I've never been to Yemen. I can't speak a word of Arabic. But at the same time, it's our job, isn't it, to try and explain to a wider audience why things happen. Because otherwise, millions of people in the West have no idea why anything's happening, why wars happen, why prices go up. I thought that was the job of journalism, to make clear what is obscured.
Absolutely. And some of the facts speak for themselves. The Houthis were subject to a war for about 7 years, which killed 300,000 people, which precipitated a humanitarian crisis. And not only were they not ousted from power, it solidified their grip on those parts of Yemen that were in their control. So I think that you've got to say that this is an organization that's here to stay, that they're operating effectively as the Yemeni state, and that when there have been attempts to dislodge the Houthis from power, which have relied on other countries coming in and bombing Yemen, it has not worked, right? Those are just facts. There is absolutely no value judgment being made here by me. These are just very, very simple facts. And the position of the British political, media, and indeed military establishment when faced with those facts is to go, well, why don't Yemenis think we're the goodies and that the Houthis are the baddies when we aided and abetted the Saudi UAE campaign, which killed 300,000 people, and we're bombing them again. Now, when you put it like that, you realize how exceptionally stupid that proposition is, right? Because the Houthis might not be great defenders of human rights in Yemen, but they've got this going for them. They're Yemeni, unlike the Saudis, the UAE, the US, and the UK. And it means that in the eyes of many Yemenis, they will have a hell of a lot more legitimacy than a foreign power, right? That is just a simple statement of facts. Now, I'm sure that there are many people in the media, there are many people who would like to see me reported to prevent for saying this kind of thing. They'd like to say, oh, she's supporting a terrorist organization. I'm absolutely not. There are no value judgments being made here. This is just what journalism is. It is the transmission of facts, and I'll allow the audience to draw their own conclusions. Just don't be surprised when those conclusions are really quite different from the ones that you glean from mainstream media, because it's not based on wishes or aspirations of what I want to be true, right? It's not just a form of journalistic manifesting. It's just a sober look at what's happened in Yemen since 2015.
I just want to respond to that, Ash. This is so key for me. The media repeatedly is effectively psyoping the public on hugely important issues. Before war in Ukraine, I often heard the refrain, Russia's economy is, it's got a smaller economy than Spain. It can't fight a war against Ukraine. Well, actually, on certain measures, it's a pretty large economy. It's about the same size as Germany on GDP, PPP, a certain measure. But you can't say, oh, why are you a cheerleader for Putin? Well, we're just discussing their capacity to fight a war or not. You want to be right about that, surely. Or in Afghanistan, the Taliban are finished. Well, actually, no, the Taliban command significant support in Afghanistan. And actually, the government, Western-backed government there, it's built on cards. It doesn't exist. It's like a matchstick house. It'll collapse as soon as we leave. Oh, why are you a cheerleader for the Taliban? And so repeatedly we get these geopolitical events, Afghanistan, Russia, there'll be many more, by the way, where the public in this country, the US, across Europe, they're gazumped because nobody in the media actually tries to relay facts. But like you say, they relay what they would like to believe. They relay what would like to be true. Okay, let's see how that goes. By the way, the UK came bottom in a recent league table for trust in the media, precisely for stuff like this.